You have allowed this Dark Lord to twist your mind until now. Until now you have become the very thing you swore to destroy.
I can't believe I'm finally doing this. So, if you've been around the channel for a while, or really seen just about any of my New Vegas videos, then you know I have a burning hatred of the Omertas who run Gomorrah. Naturally, when you begin to show this much emotion towards something, people begin to take notice, which, in my case, meant I began getting flooded with comments of people asking me to try and beat New Vegas as an Omerta, and therefore forego massacring them at least once. Other than not wiping that stain of a casino off the map, what other rules and restrictions does such a run actually entail? Well, it also means I will only have access to what they wear for protection, so a dirty white suit, as well as only being able to fight back with weapons that they are known to use also. Fortunately, that's better than my defensive options, as the Omertas actually have access to a decent, albeit small, range of weapons. Knives and shotguns for close range encounters, and SMGs and a magnum for medium to long range. Of course, acquiring these weapons will be a task in and of itself, as, again, I cannot just walk in and shoot up the place, as I need to work with them as much as I can this run. All but the riot shotgun are common enough, as it tends to require the player to be around level 15 to 20 before even showing up. So it more than likely will not make an appearance until near the end of the adventure. Also, if it wasn't clear, one of the extra objectives I'm setting for myself today is to get all of these weapons. Figured it was a nice incentive to go on some side journeys and not just rush the fastest ending to free me from this prison. I have a couple of other noteworthy tasks I want to take care of that I feel fit the character run, but we will get to them when the time comes. Now with all that out of the way, let's begin. I could have probably thought of a fitting name, but I decided just being a random thug who somehow got tangled up in all this mess with the main plot was much funnier. Appearance, well, normally I would try and find a reference for the character, and to be fair, I did get a few, but I just decided to make him a generic looking sleazy goon who is thinning a little on the top. For my stats, nothing particularly came to mind, so I dumped them all into luck, because he can count himself fortunate that I don't just swallow a bullet from the 9mm that Doc Mitchell is about to give me. Finally for my tag skills, I went with guns, barter and speech. Guns is self-explanatory with their decent selection of weapons, and as for barter and speech, well, they do run a successful casino and hotel on the Vegas Strip, so making money and smooth-talking people is kind of their whole MO. You could argue I should have tagged melee weapons as they do have access to combat knives, and while that's true, in my countless slaughters of them over the years, I can barely recall any of them actually attempting to rush me with one. So I figured they weren't skilled enough with them to want to rely on them unless it was a last resort. You may have noticed I said the final part of creation this time was my tag skills and not traits. Well, that's because basic nameless NPCs don't get traits, so neither do I. Doc gives me the starting items related to my choices and I immediately discard them all, 1, because I'm roleplaying as an asshole, and 2, none of them are all that useful today. In full control, and I already noticed my first blunder of the run, was not tagging repair, as I could have used it to fix Doc Mitchell's broken 9mm submachine gun and get access to my first usable weapon. Well, at least I know where there is one, so if I level up or find a magazine and get my repair up to 25, I can swing back and pick it up. Not much of note in Good Springs, so I begin heading for Sloan. It's a decent location to get marked early on, has some free caps up for grabs, and as luck would have it, a Dean's Electronics book. It'll permanently raise my repair to 20, so I'm at least slightly closer to that submachine gun. After a bit of snooping around, it becomes very clear that there ain't much for me here either. I know of a few locations where suits can spawn, so I'm not too fussed about trying to track down one of those just yet. Weapons, though, would certainly help speed along the process of getting the ball rolling, and while I may not know anywhere to grab any of the guns off the top of my head, I do know that there is a combat knife in one of the tables at the Vicky and Vance Casino, so I was off to Prim. As per usual, the trip is uneventful, with just the usual Gecko and Radroach dispute. Making it to the town, and I effortlessly walk past the 2 worst convicts in history, as they don't manage to land a single shot on me, nor do they follow this completely naked, unarmed man into the casino to try and finish him off. I immediately grab the knife, but before I go to give them a London hello, I decide to look around the casino for anything else that I could potentially use or sell. To my delight, there was a 9mm SMG just sitting out in the open in one of the unlocked safes. It was easy to carry out of sight and steal it without everyone gunning for me as well. I also stole and then bought some ammo for good measure. It's in a rather miserable condition, but I like to imagine the rusty barrel will rub off on the bullets and help them inflict some poison damage. Regardless of whether that would actually work, it is still competent enough to get the job done and dispatch the 2 convicts patiently waiting for me back outside. I opt not to rescue Beagle just yet, figured I might save it for later if I end up needing to desperately grind for levels to get that riot shotgun. I do make a stop in Nash's house real quick to grab the Fixin' Things magazine. By reading this, I can use the extra temporary points to my repair to go back to Doc Mitchell's, fix up his 9mm, and then use it to repair my own. With no real sense of direction, I figured I can't go wrong just following my normal routine of heading through Hidden Valley to the shortcut. This was also the one and only time I made use of the combat knife during the entire run. Sure, the submachine gun would tear these bark scorpions a new one, but that little thing also guzzles its way through ammo, so I'm trying to conserve as much of that as I can for now should I run into a bigger threat. Squishing the scorpions pushes me to level 2, and I just drop everything into guns and take rapid reload for my first perk. It's not necessary for the SMG, but I see myself getting some good use out of the sawn-off once I find one, and considering that gun needs to reload after every single shot, the less time I spend feeding it shells, the better. No mutants or nightkin greet me at the bottom of Black Mountain, so I'm also free to continue untested. I decide to make a brief stop off at the Repcon headquarters. In one part, because it has some decent loot to sell that will help fund this ridiculous amount of ammo I plan to purchase, but also I am going to have to meet the Brotherhood at some point, so grabbing the holotape now means I have the choice to do it sooner rather than later if I wish. Due to the level I just gained, I had the required gun skill to unlock trading with Alexander up at the 188, so that was my next stop on this journey. For whatever reason, right before I spoke with him, I decided to check the suitcase next to the weird kid I tend to forget about, and as luck would have it, right there in the suitcase was in fact the dirty pre-war businesswear that I was also on the lookout for. Again, as mentioned, this is the only armor or clothing we can wear in this entire video. It's abysmal, let's not sugarcoat it. The only thing it does is give you an extra 5 points in speech. While helpful in specific circumstances, I highly doubt it's going to come into play with the route that I am slowly planning in my head. Anyway, back on track, we get to trading with Al, and while he may not have any new weapons for us to make use of, he does have over 200 bullets for the 9mm, as well as one in perfect condition. Thanks to what we took from the dead Fiends and Brotherhood members over in Repcon, we are easily able to afford both, while still having more than enough caps to spare for the next vendor we hit up. The next in question being more gun runners. Not much to go over, same as before, just more 9mm rounds. My luck quickly turns around once we make it into Freeside though, as Mick and Ralph both have what we need. Ralph has even more ammo, but also sells me a sawn-off, which will more than likely be my go-to for close-range encounters until we get the oh-so-busted riot shotgun. I also buy some chlorine from Ralph while I'm here too. We will need this later to help out the Omertas. I think I just threw up my mouth a little just saying that. With 1,000 bullets to my name and twice as many caps, I figure now is as good a time as any to check out the strip and get to my duties there. First up, I go and see Mr. House. Always good to be on speaking terms with your boss, at least for now. He tells me about Benny and to go and retrieve the platinum chip. Naturally, we oblige, not so much because we wish to do his bidding, but rather one of my other goals was to make sure Gomorrah was completely uncontested on the strip, so that means it's bye-bye to the other casinos. Assaulting a casino with nothing but a 9mm SMG and a sawn-off shotgun may sound like a bad idea, and you would be correct. Yeah, for some reason I never took into consideration that I am just as weak defensively as they are this time. Led to a few more deaths than I expected, I'll say. Fortunately, I do have my luck maxed, remember, so naturally it was just a matter of slamming my head against the proverbial wall until the crits started to line up in my favour. Sure, I could also have left and stocked up on healing supplies, and really there's no reason I shouldn't have done that, but truth be told I was just being lazy. Didn't take too much longer from when I started having these thoughts to the point where the tide began to turn in my favour. VATS is a hell of a game changer for people like me who tend to primarily stick to melee weapons, and therefore when it's time to pick up a gun, end up looking like this. Outside of VATS, I don't really bother trying to go for headshots. The chairmen don't have enough armour for me to worry about taking them out ever so slightly faster by reducing their skull into mince. As for the main man himself, well, since I haven't followed the intended path, this means he'll be waiting at the top of the stairs as opposed to over in the corner behind the blackjack tables. Regardless, he is completely unfazed by the carnage unfolding around him, which works for me as it allows a stealth attack along with some free extra damage before he has a chance to retaliate. Once the battle is over, I gain a few levels for my efforts. All skill points are split between guns once more, as well as a few into speech this time. I've never properly sided with the Omertas before, like, ever, so I wasn't sure if I needed a high speech skill to proceed their quest. Spoiler warning, you don't. This ended up being mostly wasted points. Yay. As for the perk, I went with toughness. The 2 ranks of this perk are all I can get in the way of protection, so it's vital I pick them up as soon as possible. Right, with the tops cleansed, I head up to pay Yes Man a visit. Won't be siding with him entirely, but asking him about the Omertas now gets me the info I need to be able to press the receptionist to get the ball rolling on this whole ordeal that pains me to my core. Speaking of, once I get said info, I can ask one of my fellow Omertas about Cucino, and in doing so, summon him like the hellspawn that he is. As he turns to walk away, I swipe his journal, and now is where I go down a dark path and follow this quest in a way I have never done before. By taking the book to the guard at the door and informing them I have something for the bosses, I am allowed to access the top floor, where I can then find Big Sal and give him the rundown on the situation with Cucino and his imminent betrayal. Considering we are all mobsters here, it doesn't take a genius to figure out how Cucino was going to pay for his crimes against Gomorrah and its people. Bonus points for me is that I can root around his remains to get myself my next weapon, a 44 revolver. After this, I talk with Sal once again, and agree to help him with whatever other plans the Omertas have at present. He tells me to go find Clandon and Troik in the casino and help them with whatever tasks they give me. I start with Clandon as I have already finished his task. He wants to make a chlorine gas bomb so he can wipe out a large group of people in a small area quietly for the bosses. And now you know why we bought that chlorine from Mick earlier. Handing that over to this psychopath is literally all he requires, so it's on to Troika. But his request is a little more involved, by which I mean he requires me to leave the Vegas area entirely to go and grab a shipment of weapons that was recently stolen by a small group of fiends. They're out near Cook and his band, so it's not like I'm travelling all that far. I get some use of Cucino's revolver here, as it's easily the best weapon I have access to in terms of fighting at long range. The only problem is my melee mentality strikes again, and I begin approaching them like an idiot. Recall that fiends like to carry laser and plasma weapons, and it should come as no shock to you that I immediately crumple after about 3 hits. At least my deaths don't faze me this time around. After all, each one is just another Omerta corpse to the pile, and that pleases me greatly. Next go around, I stay at medium to long range, and make use of the revolver by missing 90% of my shots on stationary targets. I then switch over to the SMG, as spraying and praying is a viable strategy, assuming you have the ammo to compensate you for your recklessness. With them dead, I can return the weapons from this locker on the ground. You know, I've always wondered what this was for. Legitimately never knew it was tied to a quest, let alone one for these pissants. Back to Gomorrah once more, I hand over the guns to Troik. He thanks me for my work, as does Big Sal when I inform him that I have helped his 2 cretins. The Omertas are now all but ready to attack the strip once the Legion assaults the dam, so that they may gain complete control over it and increase their power. But hey, let's not worry about the horrible ramifications of our actions. By doing things this way, we can get a new shiny Pip-Boy.
I love gold!
I also restock on ammo while I'm here and then return to the Lucky 38 to give the platinum chip back to house because I like money. For my final act on the strip, I make my way over to the White Gloves and give them the same courtesy I gave the chairman. On the bright side, this is miles easier than the cleansing of the tops. It's all down to the fact that the White Gloves are all horribly optimized melee builds. Don't even seem to have the travel light perk to help them close in on ranged targets. Ugh, cringe. Caesar will be mad at me, sure, but hey, we served the Omertas first here today, and everyone else second. I am going to kill them so hard in my next run, it's not even funny. I do one final round of shopping before pressing on, and wouldn't you know it, I was able to procure myself a 10mm SMG. I genuinely love this little gun, have since Fallout 3, so I'm actually weirdly excited that I get to use it, especially if I find some of the mods for it. It can pack quite a punch if I get them all. As no run is complete without him, as I am heading south, I bump into our good old friend Malcolm Holmes. He gets the same greeting that he always receives. Killing him gets me in the mood for more combat, so I fill that need at the nearby dry lake as I begin slaughtering the fire ants. This is where I finally got some actual use out of the 44. And I do mean properly this time. I don't particularly feel like getting roasted by them. Toughness is great and all, but I don't have any actual fire resistances.
6 bullets, more than enough to kill anything that moves.
It doesn't take long to deal with them all, and now I'm ever so slightly closer to level 9. I contemplated following the road some more and taking the safer path through Novak to the fort, but I figured I've got all these weapons for a reason, may as well put them to good use. Cazadors are terrifying no matter what stage of the game you're at, let's be real. Once more though, that saves my bacon, as coupling it with the 10mm allows me to make very short work of them. I may have also taken some steady for good measure, as you can't be too careful. My game plan when facing them is to focus on the wings normally, as if you manage to cripple them, then they lose the ability to fly, and by that stage you've essentially already won the fight. This time though, I got lucky enough with crits that the focus fire on the wings just ends up killing them outright. Not much else happens on my way to the cove, other than getting teleported by some legion to Nelson, as well as feeling a random quest as I walk down this street. Arriving at the fort, and just before meeting with Caesar, I managed to buy an upgrade for the SMG off of deal. This will reduce the spread of it a bit and make it slightly easier to hit things at long range, if for some reason I don't feel like using the revolver. Right, so Caesar gives me the usual spiel of how he wants me to work for him and how I need to go down into the bunker and destroy whatever's down there. You know, I always found it weird that he didn't send some of his own men down to investigate the very second he had them take the chip from you at the entrance, but whatever. Of course, House has a gamer setup down here and demands me to work for him and start up the Securitrons. But we are past the point of working with him now. We are a good little shitstain today, so we need to work towards furthering the other Omerta's goals, which means Caesar is our new best friend. The handful of Protectrons and turrets barely even classify as a defense, so it's not long before I am ruining over 200 years of prep by Mr. House in mere seconds. I tried talking with him on the way out, but he just refused to acknowledge me. I figured he'd be mad as hell and want to start berating me, but turns out that's not the case. Well, we shall be having a proper face-to-face encounter soon enough, as Caesar's next task is to pull the plug on our Hard Hughes impersonator. Things seem like they are going to be civil when I arrive, as the two Securitrons by the lift are not immediately trying to rip me in half. That all changes, mind you, the instant my smug face shows itself on the penthouse floor, as I am torn limb from limb by a whole group of angry sentient televisions. Not one to back down, I threw myself at this a couple more times, and while I managed to fight back and take a few down, I am always unceremoniously shot to bits or blown up. To be fair, I have no one to blame for this but myself. I didn't have to bring the chip back to house before heading to the fort and therefore upgrading the Securitrons on the strip, but there you go. My grand strategy this time was abusing the fact that they seemingly cannot leave this room. Basically, I poked my head through the doors, began blasting for a bit, and then once I started to take a little too much damage, I would slink back to the elevator, leave, go to the bed in the presidential suite to heal up, and then return ready to throw down once more. After doing this a couple of times, I somehow managed to de-aggro the few surviving Securitrons. House still wouldn't speak to me, so it's not like he called them off, nor did I surrender. Always nice when a glitch works in your favour for a change. I tell Not at Home that it's just business before promptly ending his miserable life with the sawn off. I am now level 10, and this time I take Finesse. Already have 10 points in luck, so having this under my belt is going to work wonders for an effective crit build. I am a glass cannon, remember, so I may as well squeeze out as much damage as I physically can. With House out of the picture, it's time to return to Caesar and continue with the path set before us. Although I did end up installing Yes Man into the system for no reason. I'm happy I did though, otherwise I wouldn't have got to hear what is one of my favourite lines in all of New Vegas.
I can't get over how brave you were to destroy all those Securitrons at the fort. You know, it's just gonna make everything so much more... challenging. Yeah, challenging.
I do another ammo restock, return to Caesar, and get my next task of enlisting or eliminating the boomers. I am going for the latter today. Don't want any opposition for the Omertas after all. Also, truth be told, I already know what my next 2 New Vegas runs are going to be, and both will involve helping them out, so I figured this would at least make things a tad different in the long run. Raquel, Pearl, and one unfortunate nobody who was in the wrong place at the wrong time all get a face full of buckshot the very second they bring me to meet with their leaders. Sadly for them, all they tend to have to really defend themselves with are explosive weapons, and even they're smart enough to know not to use those in close quarters, lest they want to be sitting in multiple places at once, so to speak. Back to the fort once more, and we are already on to dealing with the Brotherhood. There was a request to go and help the White Gloves, but due to our previous actions, that will not be happening anytime soon. But yes, the forceful removal of the Brotherhood is next. I didn't feel like being sneaky and using the codes, I'd rather just fight my way through them. That in itself presents a problem, in that I don't have the arsenal or relevant perks to be able to stand up to a small group of paladins, let alone an entire base full of them. My only saving grace for blasting my way through there would be the riot shotgun, along with the relevant perks Stay Back and Shotgun Surgeon, for CC and armor penetrations respectively. That means I need to reach level 16. Before someone mentions it, I know some riot shotguns spawn in Vault 34, the vault where the boomers came from. But to be blunt, I really did not feel like travelling through that today. So I was doing things the old-fashioned way, grinding XP until I was a high enough level for the gun to be brought into the vendor's rotation. Luckily, the Gunrunner's Vendotron will always sell one, in full condition no less, once you reach level 16, so at least there is a silver lining there in that I know I'll get one for certain. It's just gonna take a little time.
2 hours later.
Alright, may have underestimated the sheer time investment of the grind, so let's rapid fire what I did to finally hit 16. Started how I normally do anytime I need experience, went over to the Black Mountain Crater to bully the centaurs and Mo, followed by a trip up the mountain to put Tabitha and her Nightkin in their place. Like mentioned, the 10mm SMG is a little beast and I love it. This got me to level 12, where I then was able to take my first required shotgun perk. My skill points at this stage were kinda just getting tossed around between repair and medicine, as they were the only two that seemed even remotely important from this point on. Old habits die hard, so I cleared out some more ants, this time the ones near Nipton. Not as much XP as the fire ants from earlier, but we take what we can get. I would have done some busy work for the NCR to help us along, but let's just say we weren't exactly on speaking terms anymore. In fact, I am now shot on sight. At least it's nice to be wanted. I figured the fiends were messing with the Omertas before when they stole the guns, so that means it would be in my best interest to thin them out, by which I mean I staged a one-man assault on Vault 3 and eradicated them off the face of the Mojave. Honestly, went smoother than I hoped. Seeing how the NCR want me burnt at the stake, I went about disrupting some of their plans, whether that was shooting them on sight or aiding the Khans in Boulder City against their whole hostage crisis. Oddly enough, I was able to save the hostages, and the Khans let them go free after slaughtering the rest of the troops. I made my way for Red Rocket around this time, not so much to continue working with the Khans, but rather I wanted access to their armory, as they sell a frankly absurd amount of ammo. Probably the best I'm going to get, as I won't have access to the one at Hoover Dam. May not have the riot yet, but it didn't hurt to stock up on shells for the time, plus the journey there from Good Springs allowed for some good hunting of Cazadors, Vipers, and Bighorners alike. Took another random detour and ended up bumping into more NCR edgelords. Second verse, same as the first. Normal people were becoming a bit stale to fight, so I shifted focus to beat up some well done ones out near Wolfhorn Ranch. They had a couple of reavers, which was almost more than I bargained for, but I am roleplaying as a slippery bastard, so we make do. Now I am level 15, so it's time for the final stage of my Omerta takeover plan. Essentially, I returned to Freeside and made doubly sure that once again, the Omertas would come out on top via process of elimination. The Legion would no doubt drive out the Kings and Van Graffs regardless of my involvement, but I figured I could help speed things along. As for the Garretts and the Atomic Wrangler, well, while smaller scale, it's another casino and we sure as hell cannot have that sitting like the blemish it is right in our backyard. Ever so close to the fated level, I realised I never finished off the other 3 fiend leaders, so went about dealing with them, and before you know it, we were level 16. Had a minor scare when the shotgun didn't spawn with the gunrunners, but turns out I just hadn't given them enough time to refresh their stock. After travelling away and waiting a bit, I was able to come marching back and purchase a riot shotgun in pristine condition. With the weapon in hand, I made a few pit stops before confronting the Brotherhood. Mainly to stock up on ammo one final time before the end game, as well as purchasing some healing supplies. No way around it, I am going to be taking a lot of damage, so I'll need something to keep me on my feet during the shootout. The plan was to go in and hope that the Stay Back perk keeps taking effect so that I can keep them all knocked down and slowly deal with them one at a time. The rapid fire of the riot shotgun certainly helps. After all, the faster I can fire, the faster I can trigger it. The damage output is fine, definitely miles better than the other weapons at my disposal. The only strange thing I noticed was that headshots weren't doing as much damage as I thought. Unless I was in VATS, then they were just tearing through their helmets without a care in the world. I guess it's maybe that in VATS every single part of the spray is connecting with them and not spreading out in the wide arc? Honestly, couldn't say. All I knew was that the strategy had now been changed, that I was to try and take them out in vats, and then proceed to keep the rest knocked down until my action points were fresh enough for me to get more headshot one-shots. I'm talking like this was a perfect plan. Believe me, it wasn't. No matter how well thought out and executed it could be, there was always the chance that the knockdown perk wouldn't trigger, because it isn't a consistent thing, remember, meaning, if I was unlucky, I was more than likely about to find out what a Gauss rifle does to the human torso. At the very least, there are a lot of tight corridors I can lead them through, plus in some situations I can take the high ground for even more of an advantage. The top floor is the hardest section by far, so at least once I manage to scrape past it, I know I'm all but in the clear. This is due to there only being a total of 3 paladins on the bottom level of the base. McNamar's 2 guards and head paladin Harden, all 3 of which barely put up a fight. McNamara at the very least was able to do a sweet backflip over his desk. Real shame he screwed up the landing though. All that leaves is some scribes and initiates in and around the room with the self-destruct switch. They do not last long. Don't even need to worry about headshots with these ones. The shotgun surgeon perk makes it so that their recon armor is essentially worthless. I figured the quest would advance now that they were all dead, but it seems that Caesar requires you to fully destroy the bunker. So I quickly grab the keycards, input the codes, and make my way back for the final stretch of the run. Caesar is dying due to having lower intelligence than a mole rat, so it's up to me to save him. I was all but prepared to shoot up the clinic, but as it turns out, despite being allied with the NCR and recognizing me as vilified, they don't attack me on sight. Works for me, so I purchase the tools and use my overwhelming luck stat to somehow save Caesar. With his new lease on life, he naturally orders someone else's be taken. A real soul for a soul moment. Well, unfortunately for him, I am completely incapable of taking out Kimball. I cannot approach the dam without being fired upon due to my rep, but I also refuse to equip the NCR disguise as it goes against the nature of the character run. In other words, I must fail this quest. Thankfully, Obsidian was kind enough to make this one of those tasks failed successfully moments, as no matter how bad you mess this up, and no matter how mad he gets, Caesar will forgive you and order you to take part in the final assault on the dam. Figured I'm as prepared as I possibly can be, so I agree to go and meet with the legate. He spouts some nonsense about Mars and whatnot, but I'm just here to get paid and strengthen the Omerta's grip on the strip. After receiving my orders, which are just doing the damn assault backwards to how you would normally do in every other ending, I head on over to meet up with the Legion troops and get this show on the road. I was taken aback by just how squishy the NCR troopers taking part in the defense really were. And this is without the shotgun surgeon perk to ignore their armor rating, by the way. I switched back to some of my other weapons to get some use out of them again before the finale. The 9mm SMG in particular sees the most use here. During the grinding session and all those times I had to run around to find more ammo, I was able to find and buy all the upgrades for it, so now it fires much faster and has considerably more ammo to boot. It may also be more accurate than before, but I'm not sure. Either way, I was having no trouble hitting my targets, even when I was firing from the hip. That said, I switched back to the shotgun momentarily during the push to do some sniping. Yes, you heard that right. The interior run up to Oliver through the dam wasn't much different, so let's just talk about that final encounter. Absolute cakewalk. Not gonna pretend like I am shocked. The instant I saw that the riot shotgun could hold its own against people in power armor, I kinda knew that the NCR did not stand a chance. Some of the weaker ones were even getting one-shotted at this point. The rangers on the floor below Oliver tend to be a pain, what with all the traps and all, but even they were thwarted by the knockdown. You don't need to be close for it to work, you just need even a single pellet to graze somebody for it to have a chance of taking effect. Once I sweep them off their feet, I just rushed over and gave them the old 4 VATS beeps to the noggin. Making matters even easier is the fact that they drop 10 super stimbacks. Like, I mean, what? His buddy goes down just the same, leaving only the general and his brotherhood wannabes. So, anyway, here is how the illustrious general of the NCR fared in a fight against a random bouncer at a casino. The guards don't really contribute much to the fight either. One was able to hit me with a few shots from his hunting shotgun, so that's something. This is the real reason I typically don't do Legion runs. Its final fight is just miles easier than fighting the Legate. Sure, the Legate isn't the hardest fight in the game or anything, but he is certainly leagues above Oliver. Speaking of which, we return to the Legate, finishing the game, realise there isn't even a slide for helping out Gamora during the ending, and proving yes, you can indeed beat Fallout New Vegas as an Omerta. Not that you'd ever want to. Despite the subject matter filling me with an unshakable bloodlust at all times, I can at least admit that the selection of weapons was fun to use. And I suppose at the very least now I can finally say I have got the Pimp Boy in at least one of my New Vegas runs. As some of you may know, this was the 99th Fallout run on the channel. This and the next one were both the most requested videos I've ever gotten through the comments, so the next video might be the New Vegas run as myself, which is basically just how I play the game casually, so that should be fun, I think, hopefully. It might not be the next video. I have a Skyrim run that I've had most of the footage for since December. I've just been meaning to edit it, so who knows, maybe that'll be next. Regardless, that's going to be the end of the challenge video. If you enjoyed what you saw, consider giving the video a like. If you're interested in more challenges in the future, feel free to subscribe. I'm trying to run these videos out fairly frequently. My name's Nerbit. Stay safe, everyone. I'll see y'all in the next video.